Guys, welcome back. Gather around the campfire. I have great things to discuss with you today. I've been playing the FromSoft games for about 4 years at this point. I was a late bloomer because I bought Bloodborne when I first got my PlayStation 4, and I couldn't get past the tutorial. Yeah, it was a rough start. A couple years later, I gave it another go. Turns out, I needed to travel via lamp into a dream world to pick up my flippin' weapon from these, shriveled raisin men. You see where I was confused? And here we are, my channel being consumed by Elden Ring content years later. Anyways, I thought it'd be fun to rank the toughest bosses from each FromSoft game from easiest to hardest, based on how I feel about them now, after running through these games countless times. Of course, the bosses I chose are my personal opinion, so if you want to fight me in the comment section, go for it. But without further ado, my name is Josh, also known as Goo Goo Gaga Man, and I hope you enjoy my ranking on the toughest bosses in the Soul series, plus Bloodborne, plus Sekiro, plus Elden. And I think it's easier just to say FromSoft. The Flame Lurker is a notorious boss known for being a massive wall exclusive to melee builds. As a man who likes to poke things, I was no exception. He was the only boss in the game where I thought, you know what, let me just come back to you later because I'm not ready for this yet. Not to mention that Demon Souls is not like Elden Ring, you're going to be running all the way back to the fog wall after every failed attempt. That in and of itself is a boss fight. Now in comparison to the rest, his run isn't that bad, but it's still a pain. Flame Lurker is insanely aggressive. You barely have any time to breathe throughout the fight, unless the AI gets a bit wonky. He delivers powerful punches with AoEs that cover a good amount of ground, making it hard not to take damage. I found that not locking on and simply keeping my distance was a pretty solid strategy. I would let him throw his temper tantrum, then sneak in a couple of hits, run away, and just be annoying. Hey, if the bosses can do it, so can I. I should also mention that if you're a mage build or have any sort of projectiles, you win. This fight is trivial. Seriously, it's only a matter of time before you get reported for harassment, so he gets docked points for that. Regardless, once I came back, it was only a few attempts before he went down. He's like a 4 out of 10 in comparison to the rest of the bosses coming up next. Speaking of next, Dark Souls 2 is a bit weird. This game feels like a fever dream to me. I remember it all and nothing at the same time. And if there is one boss that I remember fondly, it's Fume Knight. Ironically, on my first run ever, I beat this guy on my second try. I died once because I didn't have sex with the idols outside the arena, but once I quenched their horniness, it was honestly not that bad. The thing about Fume Knight, I don't know if this is true for anyone else, but it is for me. He's one of the hardest hitting bosses in the entire series. Straight up an Avengers level threat with the heap of iron he calls a sword. Once he's down to half health, he imbues his Ultra Greatsword with a dark flame, which he then proceeds to conjure rings of fireballs or sweep his sword like a metal detector trying to detect unskilled players. However, the answer to both phases is very simple. Strafe. Fume Knight cannot handle 90-degree angles, so as long as you're beside him, you'll be fine. I will admit, if you don't know about the idols outside the arena, this fight is impossible, especially if you use the wedges beforehand, which are necessary to get rid of them. At that point, you either lose outright, or you have to keep Fume Knight in an obscure corner so that he can't heal. He's pretty much the Ender Dragon now that I think about it, in a weird way. And the only reason I had enough for my first run was because I streamed this game for the first time, and chat told me to keep at least 4 on hand at all times. Either way, the fight itself is not bad when compared to the other bosses. Now this one may surprise some people, but I'm being truthfully honest when I say that the Orphan of Kos is a cakewalk nowadays. The reason why lies within the, Okay, can we not play this cutscene while I'm trying to talk here? The reason why lies within the mechanics of Bloodborne's parry. See, Bloodborne is the easiest game out of the entire franchise when it comes to parrying. Guns are great. I mean, you can be at a solid distance without any worry of danger, and as long as you time it right, the window is a bit generous too. You'll be a pro in no time. An incredibly useful skill that was battered into me when dealing with the Orphan of Kos. The first time I found this dude, I started playing at about 12 p.m., and at around 12 a.m. is when I finally defeated him. I'm exhausted just remembering that. Kind of a side note here, I can't play games for that long anymore. It's not that I don't enjoy them any less, but at max 3 hours, and then I have to take a break. Otherwise I go mental. Anyways, yeah, Orphan was really difficult for my first couple of runs, but at a rapid pace, I learned his patterns like I was studying at Hustler's University. Before long, I could beat the toughest boss in Bloodborne with parries only, and that's still my preferred way. It also helps that he screams like a banshee during the windups. It just kind of helps with the timing. And because of my expertise in parrying in Bloodborne, the Orphan of Kos can barely get a hit in. If he does hit me, I have that rune that heals when penetrating things, so like even if he does, I barely use any vials during this fight anymore. Now in my prime, I think, I could probably beat the Orphan of Kos blindfolded using the audio cues for reference. If anything, I could parry him blindfolded, like that's no question. But getting the critical hits and like the spacing, yeah, that would be more difficult. For an hour and a half on stream, I battled Manus, Father of the Abyss, stepdad to my suffering. I played the Dark Souls games backwards, so I played Bloodborne, then Dark Souls 3, 2, and then I played 1. And even after all my experience, Manus still gave me quite a rough beating. The best description I can give you about Manus is that he has the speed of a Dark Souls 3 boss, but you're stuck with the clunky nature of Dark Souls 1. I understand bosses being more mobile than you, but to be mechanically superior is a high wall to overcome. Unless you use Black Knight weapons. Even then, I had trouble with the second phase. I mean, it's not really defined as a second phase, he just kind of uses magic at around half health. For the longest time, I couldn't figure out the Ring of Dark Orbs. I would get hit constantly, followed shortly by the combo attack, which was demoralizing to say the least. Especially if you're already dead halfway through and he just keeps going. For the orbs, it's actually pretty easy, just dodge backwards. And for the combo, I still don't know. I found out on my third run, I believe, that strafing around his crotch is not a half bad strategy. Or using magic, but that's up to personal preference. Manus is not just the hardest boss in Dark Souls 1, but he's my favorite too. I enjoy his fight, even though the run to his arena is worse than having your nipples twisted. Now, I was gonna put Gale here. I even wrote the entire section down, but I soon realized that as of right now, Sister Fried is the toughest boss for me. If you were to ask me this question about a year ago, then yeah, Homeless Santa Claus for sure. But Sister Fried is on another level even when you're experienced. Very similar situation to Manus, Sister Fried is fast enough where I can barely keep up. She has the speed of a Bloodborne boss who's stuck in Dark Souls 3. The only main difference here is that she has 3 health bars. Slave Knight Gale has 3 phases, yes, but she has 3 separate health bars. You know how intimidating that was for the first time, depleting those 2 health bars thinking that the fight was done? And then hearing Father Ariandel, or whoever is speaking, talk about Sister Fried and then she gets up? You want to talk about an endurance test, nuns are brutal. Now, first phase is nothing crazy, although when I lose track of her when she's invisible, I do have a small panic attack, but other than that, she's fine. It's really the second phase where issues start to occur. Normally, I hate gang fights, but for once, I'm actually fine with it. Sister Fried isn't as aggressive, and she normally pimp walks from afar, as Father Ariandel tries to show us his favorite bull. Not to mention, they have a combined health bar, which makes things much more manageable. Don't get it twisted though, this phase is still pretty difficult. Now the third phase is where her pace picks up to absurd levels. Fighting her head on is suicide. I've tried, it's a nightmare. I normally wait for certain attacks where a backstab is available, or there are certain attacks where I can do a couple of hits, but she really keeps you in check. Her black flames are dangerously aggressive when tracking you, but not to mention their range is great too. And if she grabs you, it's game over. I kinda suck at fighting human-sized bosses in general, but when you can chain stun them with giant boulders, it makes things a little easier. I have a confession to make. I said that I've played these games numerous times to the point where I lost count. Well, Sekiro is a bit different, because I can count that number, and it's 2. I've only replayed this game once, so my knowledge isn't vast, but I'll give you my 2 cents. The Demon of Hatred is my personal toughest boss. See, here's the thing about Sekiro, right? You can't cheese these bosses. Sure, Sister Fried can be knocked over with big boy attacks, Fume Knight can't handle 90-degree angles, Orphan of Kos, you just gun him away. The Demon of Hatred, there's nothing you can do. I mean, yeah, you have the Mortal Blade and the prosthetics and all that stuff, but you simply have to be good at the game in order to overcome this boss. I know you can also lead him off the edge with some hops over here, but if you don't take the coward's way out, be prepared to look like Zuko. The absurd thing about the Demon of Hatred is that most of his primary attacks are unblockable, because, the whole Arm of Fire. So trying to break his posture, which is, one of the main ways of taking down bosses in Sekiro, it is no longer applicable. You have to manually chip away at his health. No stance breaks, no breaks in any shape or form. Once again, like Sister Fried, it's a straight up endurance test, especially since he has 3 phases as well. Ironically though, as I rewatch my old footage of this boss, it makes me really want to play Sekiro again. I forgot how freaking awesome just the entire game is. Demon of Hatred is pretty close for me, but nothing can compare to Elden Ring's toughest boss. Let's go down the list, shall we? Malenia is quick on her feet, she's very fast, she can heal per hit, she has hyper armor on most of her attacks, she has 2 phases, extremely aggressive in the second one, massive damage. It took a century to even reach her arena in the first place, and of course, how could I forget? Malenia, Blade of Mikola, is without question the hardest boss in the entire series. Orphan of Kos took me 12 hours because it was my very first FromSoft game. Malenia, after playing through everything else, took 7 hours. She was my second longest first encounter boss fight, which didn't happen for no reason. In a game like Elden Ring, where being overpowered is easier than in any other previous title, where you can craft many different powerful builds, Malenia still manages to be a problem every single time. Now, after playing through the game 50 plus times at this point, she's not as difficult anymore, and I certainly can cheese her with certain weapon arts or spells, but geez, man, if this is what we have for the base game, because you know that FromSoft DLC, the bosses in the DLC are ridiculously tough. That's where some of the best content is too. So I am terrified of what awaits us in Shadow of the Erdtree. But for now, that's all I have to say. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And again, I would love to hear about your toughest bosses from each game as well. My outros are unscripted, and I rail off a lot, like I'm doing right now. So I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. If you guys want to become members on the channel, you can. You get these really cool Hovel Knight badges and like exclusive perks, early access to videos, things like that. You don't have to, obviously. But guys, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone, and of course, stay safe.